Hi, everybody. I'm Brendan Davis, and welcome to the very first episode of my new show here on YouTube. And you may be listening on audio only, in which case, go to YouTube. I'll put that link in these show notes so you can go check it out and check out my video interview with my very first guest. I am quite seriously excited to speak to this woman. This is someone who has a long history in my industry, and I have learned a lot from her works. I'm going to talk a little bit about her kind of seminal book, which is a reference book in this industry for certain aspects of selling your script and working in television, understanding the ecosystem. And without further ado, please welcome to the show, Ms. Kathie Fong Yoneda. Hi, Kathie. How are you?
Hi. How you guys doing?
Very glad to have you here. I would like to ask you, I've done all these interviews and I've been interviewed, of course, and it's always a little tricky. Sometimes someone on a show like this will, if you're lucky, will embarrass you with lovely things. They'll find all these amazing things to say about you, and I could embarrass you for 5 minutes. Could you please quickly introduce yourself to people the way you introduce yourself to someone who you need to tell a little more than just hi, I'm Kathie, right? I mean, sort of a professional introduction so people really know who you are in your words.
Well, I guess one of the things I can tell you is that I'm probably one of the first Asian American women to be very active in the industry, especially in this particular part of the industry. I got into this business, and it's the only thing I owe to my ex-husband.
Okay. I may drill down on that. We'll play that by ear. Please continue.
He was working in the industry, and I had moved down to Los Angeles, and he was saying, well, if you're going to get a job and, if you're going to be a secretary, you might as well be a secretary or a typist or whatever and work in the movie industry, work one of the studios. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, why there? And they said, well, because it's a union and they pay a little bit better and you get health benefits. And I thought, okay. So I noticed that Universal was hiring, so I went over there, and I took my typing test, filled out all my forms and everything, and I got hired. Now, I didn't think it was anything different. I thought, okay, that's great. I got hired, and it was about a week later that this gal who was in the typing pool came up to me and said, my friend was supposed to get that job. And I said, really? And she said, yeah.
Supposed to is an interesting choice of words. Please continue.
And she said, the only reason you got that job is because you are Chinese.
Oh, I was thinking, is this a incoming racism alert?
Yes, actually, she said, because you're Oriental.
Old school racism. Great. Okay. Please continue.
So I just sort of blew her off. I just said, I don't think so. And I walked away. Yeah. But my curiosity got the better of me. And I went down to the personnel department. I talked to the gal who had hired me. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, it's true that there were other people that could have gotten the job. Mm-hmm. But the reason you got the job was because you were the best candidate. Your typing skills and everything were excellent. Your references were excellent. Right. And that's why you got the job. But the reason why she probably is nailing you about all of this is because the motion picture industry was, I guess, being bugged by the federal government that they were going to sue them. Because they had less than 0.1% of the workforce at that time were minorities.
Wow.
Less than 0.1%.
0.1%, and this was
in 1969.
Okay. Wow. All right.
And so the motion picture industry did not want to get shut down or something by the federal government, right. So they started trying to hire other people. And luckily I happened to come in at the right time. So I got into the typing pool. So there wasn't anything about the industry that I thought, oh, I want to be in that industry. I did it because the ex-husband said, oh, well, at least there's a union and you get decent pay and you have health benefits. Right. And I thought that all made sense. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's one of those things. I was in the typing pool and I eventually moved up to the legal department, became a receptionist, and I got bored, and it was just one of those things. I kept asking, okay, do you need help here? Do you need help there? I I started to learn a lot about the legalities,
Yeah.
so many legalities in the industry, things like getting the rights of material and how television and feature films are very different. And
Right.
it was just a lot of things that I started, I guess, investigating and being curious about all of it. And they started giving me more jobs to do. And, eventually I think I caught the eye of one of these attorneys. And one of the things the good advice he gave me was, in life you have to do what comes naturally to you. And he said, you are picking all of this information up. He says, you're like a little sponge. And he says, I've just never, there hasn't been anybody here that, especially in the, secretariat, doing secretarial stuff, that really has shown a real interest in wanting to know more about this business. And so I just sort of thought, oh, that the guy's being really nice. And he later got a job over in the legal department as a senior attorney at Warner Brothers.
Okay.
And I got a phone, he gave me a phone call, and he just said, you know what? The head of the legal department needs to have a second secretary because there's such a workload over here. And he says, and it pays a lot more money than what you're making over there. So, of course, that caught my interest. Yeah. And I moved over there, still just assuming, okay, well, I guess this is my lot in life. I'll be a secretary. So I just, there was something that about it, I in the beginning, because there really weren't any computers at that time, or there were, but they
like word processors. That's all they did. It was my mom was a very in the oil and gas, and she was a legal secretary in Dallas Fort Worth at not at that exact time, but where it was still early days of the modem, where they do their nightly stuff, and it would take all night just to send basically spreadsheets over a phone line. But it took all night, and this was like the 80s or something. So yes, I that time frame, it was not connected like we are for sure.
But I'm one person who, part of my nature is that I was never afraid to ask questions. In fact, actually, I had a third grade teacher that told me, "Is there a reason why you keep asking questions?" So,
yeah, I want to learn.
Well, I mean, if I didn't understand something, or if I wanted to make kind of connections with something else, I just figured, well, I might as well ask.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, that was something my mom taught me at an early age. Don't be afraid to ask questions. So I started doing that. And I started reading all of the different contracts, and as I was typing them up, and I of course would look up and see, okay, what does that legal term mean, and all this, and also because I was the receptionist, they also had me do odd jobs, including things like having to go down to the lot and have people sign legal documents.
Okay, you had to take a contract to this star or that producer or director.
So it was great. It was fun for me because I always loved those, because I got a chance to go to
that'd be fun for anybody to pay their rent for a while,
the costume department, and got to go to see where they were doing the hair and makeup. And
so you learned the whole studio lot, basically. You learned the exec offices, the management offices, the worker bee offices, and the lot itself, what people did. Yeah. You learned what the deals were, how money flowed, who got what they were fighting over. That's a thing you don't.
Well, not to mention, sometimes I interrupted people who were being intimate.
You might knock on a tree. Oh, you might knock. Yeah, I won't tangent on my stories, but I was a sound engineer. People know me or look me up. I was a sound engineer about the first 12 years of my career, and sometimes you go to a trailer to put a wireless mic on somebody. I definitely approached the trailer during it was like a 3-hour lighting setup long setup after lunch, and I ordered, come on later. Okay. All right. And I'd tell the PA, will you let me know when so-and-so is social hours over with, and I'll go do my union job that I need to do to not get fired. Thank you. But they were doing their job. They were doing their movie star job. So.
Well, one of the things though is, I mean, I was good at my job, and evidently one of the executive secretaries noticed me coming in, and I was always doing
Hmm.
all of the transferring of back and forth of documents that had been signed and all that stuff,
Right.
and they needed to have what they called a secondary secretary
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
for the executive department. So whenever any of the executive secretaries had to go to lunch or were sick or something, they had somebody there they could trust that would take
Sure.
care of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And so I got that job. I thought, oh, that's nice. I'm in a nicer office. I get to see all these people all the time, and and I thought, okay, this is a good thing. Uh, Not never thinking, I just sort of thought that's what I'm going to be. Is I'm going to be the secretary. But it was interesting is that my the head guy who was the chairman of the board
Hmm.
had his office there, and he was the chairing. He did chairing of a breast cancer awareness
Mm.
event, and it just so happened that was something that I was actually interested in. I had done some work
Okay.
in
It, it
steering.
it it touched your life and your heart in ways, and so you wanted to be
Yeah.
involved with that. Yeah.
So he said, well, I need some help. We've got to stuff all these envelopes for this event coming up. And so I was doing it. I was stuffing envelopes and stayed like 2 hours over, and I didn't even charge them for it.
Yeah. Yeah. You were happy to help with that particular thing.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
was something I thought, oh, sure, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it was just, do you want to do a favor for me? And I didn't mind doing it.
Sure.
And then I looked at the date and everything. I realized, oh, I'm not doing anything then. Because by then, I had divorced my first husband.
Okay. So you had an open night, fancy event you helped with, and yeah,
Yeah, and
and
he
you
said,
and you
yeah,
you could probably go to that event, I'm guessing, and you probably
so,
had the nice outfit ready for such an event, or you knew where to get one, and
well, I mean, I dressed nicely, a
yes,
simple black dress.
in the
But
studio network world, yeah, you would have been fine to go from work probably.
well, it was just interesting because after I said I would do it, then I realized, oh, do you need any more help? Because I have a couple of other friends if you need help.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I called a couple of my friends that also worked on the lot and
Hmm.
so they said, sure, yeah, we'll do it because we figured, oh, it's a big fundraiser. We'll get to see famous
Yeah,
people
it'd be
and
fun. It'd be fun. And people with no context, I mean, that's the kind of thing you expect. And it's usually there aren't cameras around. I mean, there's cameras for like the big speeches and for press, but like most of it is a crazy open social atmosphere, lots of food and drink. And,
and you get to see famous
people are
people.
happy. It's a good cause. Everybody's feeling generous. It's usually like a really lovely kind of an evening. So I
Mhm.
assume that was
So
going to be pretty special.
it was very special. We really had a good time, and it all went very well.
Hmm.
And the chairman called me on the intercom, and he thanked me for
Cool.
participating. And uh, he said too. He said, I'd like to mention something to you, although you need to keep this under.
Under your hat kind of thing. Yeah.
But
Good thing.
we're going to be making some changes in the executive department. We're going to be hiring a new person, a new vice president. And I know he's going to be needing somebody to help him out. So,
Somebody who maybe knows the ropes of everything and has my ear. Yeah, yeah. This is
so
good.
he said,
This is good.
I'd like you to work with him and as his executive secretary. And
Hmm.
I thought, oh, wow, I'm kind of
Yeah,
moving up the
yeah.
ranks here. And I just thought, okay, why not? This person ended up changing my life. He was the person that I guess he was my mentor. He became my mentor, and his name was Shepard. He was a producer. He also helped to form Creative Management Associates when it was an agency.
Hmm. Hmm.
He produced films like 12 Angry Men, The Fugitive Kind, that
Right.
one was in. And his most famous film, I think, was Breakfast at Tiffany's with Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started working for him. And to me, it was the beginning of, wow, okay, there is more to this than just the paperwork that I had been doing.
Hmm.
I began to realize that this industry was drawing me in, and I was getting to know a lot more about it, and it really excited me. He just was one of these people that recognized that that there was something about me that he thought, okay, you seem to want to know more and do more. And he was happy to do that. And he says, you let me know if you have any questions, and I'll answer them. And he was good about it, and it was great, and it made me be more open to having new experiences and adventures. But as you know how Hollywood gets sometimes, there began to be an executive shuttle because the top guy at the time left. He retired. So the new person who came in wanted to fill all of the executive positions with other people.
It's typical, again, people not working in this industry. It happens in other industries too, but it's especially common in entertainment when there's a regime change. For the sake of the general people listening to us, when there's a regime change at the top in creative industries, typically not only do, of course, they bring certain people who they rely on to do their job the best, that got them that job in the first place, they bring in a few people to support them, but also there's a lot of issues. It's very typical that's when you clean the slate of everything you don't want. Whether it's like either garbage from a previous administration, or like, oh, that's too expensive, we need to stop spending money on it, or I have a project that competes with this that I'm going to prioritize, and that thing is dead now. And so that's super. It's bloodbath when you have the top changes like that. That's when people that had a deal or a greenlit movie or show, it's like that's when everything is like all bets are off. When the industry hears that there's a major change coming at a place where they have a deal, they go, uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
And they start calling their people, going, what's up? Are we okay? Are we dead? So please continue.
But it was good for me because I actually found out what I was really good at. And what it was is that what he did was he got a production deal out of the whole thing. They kept a lot.
And that's the typical parachute for the fire. If they were good at their job, it's typically, okay, here's a deal, here's a bunch of money, we get the first look at everything, here's some money for you and like an office and an assistant or somebody, and y'all go figure it out and hopefully make us, and those last long enough that then they can find another job, or they can be successful as a producer depending on what they want to do.
Well, there were some people on the lot, producers on the lot, who really needed him because he happened to know Audrey Hepburn, of course.
Oh, right.
And they were very anxious to get her out of retirement to do a movie called Robin and Marian.
Yeah. I'm vaguely remembering that title. Maybe? No, maybe not. Did that get made?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds familiar, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. And Robin was Sean Connery.
Oh, right. I'm aware of it image-wise. I might have even seen it on a plane or something, but yeah.
But anyway, he went on location, and I had just married my second husband, my present husband.
Yes.
And so I did not want to go to Spain.
You don't want to disappear for
3 months.
though it sounds fun, personal life is a factor too. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I sat in the office and was doing everything, and I just, all these scripts kept coming in, and I started reading them because I was getting bored, right? So I started reading the scripts and everything. He comes back, and there's these, 2-3 piles of scripts standing there next to his desk, and he picks one up, and I said, "Oh, you don't want to read that one?" He goes, "Why not?" And I said, "It's not very good." He goes, "Oh, okay." So he picks up another one. And I said, "Well, that one's actually even worse than that one." And he said, "How many of these did you read?" And I said, "Well, actually, I've read
all of them."
I said, there was 3 months.
Yeah, I had time. You weren't here to send me to go do things, and yeah.
So what he did was he said, "Well, okay, here." And there were some that were more important scripts that he.
Right. There was an attachment, or there was a priority of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah, but there were about 30 of them that he said, "Okay, do me a favor, just write a paragraph about what it's about, and then do another little paragraph about why you like it or don't like it, and what you think is special or not special about it." And so I thought, well, I can do this. I was really good at book reports in school, so
Right.
I'll do that. So that's what I did. And he basically said, you know what? You are pretty damn good at this.
You found your calling, lady.
And shortly thereafter, about a year or so after that, he was offered a job to head up production. He was president of production at MGM Studios.
Wow.
And he announced it to me, and he goes, "This is really great. You know, he says, in fact, guess what? You get to have your own secretary." I'm thinking, I'm a secretary, and
With a
he goes,
secretary?
"Yes." He says, he says, when you get up to be president, you you usually have a first secretary and a second secretary.
Right.
Well, this is when I thought, okay, this is kind of a new thing for me, but I just thought I'm gonna try asking him for something. I've never really asked before. So what I did, this is my first deal.
Okay.
And I said, I'll be happy to go with you and to help set up the office, and I'll train a secretary, and if there, if you need another one, a secondary one, I'll train them too.
Right.
In return, I would like to have 30 days of work in the story department as a story analyst, because you had to work for 30 consecutive days, and then you had
the union.
You had to then take all these different tests.
Sure, but that's like a minimum criteria. You needed that amount of time plus then to prove some things, and then you can officially be a story analyst in the guild. Yeah.
So that's what I did. I did my first deal, and I was good enough that actually I got hired away by Paramount and several other studios around there. Yeah,
that's what led to the journey. So he said yes, and then you were able to train folks. I found what it was that I was really good at. That's something that really sparked something in me. Yeah.
So eventually, things, you come to realize that what else do you want to do with it? And I thought, okay, I'm fine with being a story analyst and everything, but one of the things I learned in life is that it's important that you think of yourself as special, and that there's something that you do, and you want people to know that whatever they get into, you don't want it to be something this is just for the one time that you want to do it.
Exactly.
If you're serious about, and especially one thing I learned is that especially from all the writers I've worked with, if you're serious about being a writer, you don't want to write just one script or book. Yeah. You got to work more than that. Very few people that I know have gotten their first script or their first book. That they submitted, gotten it written or published or anything. So, I don't know. We always hear about first time writers and everything. And when I was an analyst, I just sort of kept looking at all these different scripts coming in. And literally, these are all coming in from agencies, so they've already been vetted.
Exactly, and and
still, 1 out of 10 of them are not, maybe out of 10
might be acceptable to consider, and then have a bunch of problems. Yeah, and people, there are all these gatekeepers in the industry that try to avoid bad material moving into the halls of power, on the desks of people who can make decisions. It doesn't do anybody any good. You're not going to make a bad, like your studio network producer. We're not going to intentionally make a bad script. We're not going to intentionally buy a bad script, develop. I mean, so the fact is that all these people whose reputation depends on, I'm going to send you a thing, and when they send it, well, it should at least be the minimum level of good you expect, or else you go, well, I'm not looking at her stuff anymore, his stuff. They're sending me turkeys here. Yeah, and so given all of that, what still makes, because it's a favor, somebody's cousin is this powerful attorney, there's all reasons, or they were awesome and then this one happens to suck, they've hit 3 home runs or whatever, and then this is like a foul ball that they hit. But yeah, so you still have to wade through this, and you have to have real taste, and you have to understand the market and the industry. You have to understand how things get financed, how people consume and buy, and how much they spend, and what's the market. But it starts with story anyway. I can't help myself from jumping in. That's
okay. I finally ended up over at Disney, and it was during the time that Eisner and Katzenberg took over Disney.
Oh, okay. I bet that was exciting. How long were you fly on the wall in it over at Disney?
It actually was a good thing for me. I ended up, doing a lot of work there, and I loved it. And then one day, Jane Rosenthal, who was a VP over there, called me in, and she just said, we've been working on this one project, and the guy has done 2 drafts, and it's just not coming together the way that we thought it would. So Jeffrey wants one of the readers, and she picked, to take a look at it, write, and just if you could go through and just write your comments about it. And I said, well, what do you mean by comments? And she says, well, tell them what you liked and didn't like, and what do you suggest doing to make it better?
So coverage is what she's asking you for, and they already have
coverage. It's actually for development notes.
Right.
It's different.
So, no, I know. I'm just trying to be clear for somebody following.
Yeah. So anyway, I started doing what now has become known as development notes. No one had ever taught me to do that, but I had read enough scripts, and I had done enough thinking about how maybe something could work better if they did it a certain way.
Right.
So I ended up with doing like a 6 or 7 page set of notes, and sent it back. Jane said, Jeffrey wants to talk to you. And if any of you know, Jeffrey Katzenberg is he's pretty tough.
Yeah, that could be either you're bracing yourself a bit because.
And I walked in there, and he tossed my coverage across the desk, and I thought, well, is this good or bad? And he said, pretty damn good. I want you to start on whatever it is. It was like a week or 2 later, and you're going to be our new creative exec. You're going to be doing things with developing scripts. And that's really kind of how I got started on all of this. And it really was one of those things that to take something that you were doing, that I was doing, and actually trying to find ways to elevate it and make it something better. The other thing that Jeffrey counted on me to do was a lot of times we would either change writers on a script, as you know, you probably have heard a lot of that.
Yeah, I've been replaced.
Oh.
On a movie, yeah.
It's okay. But it's okay. Sometimes it's I think you have to do it at least once to kind of.
They never made it. I blame that. But it's okay.
Well, anyway, it turned out that it worked out for me as being doing development and everything. I just one thing I learned though is that I knew after a while. I did it for several years. I want to say I was an executive for maybe about 8 or 9 years. And I finally realized that I did not feel I was being my best self.
Okay. Why was that? Or you were telling me?
Oh, back in those days, you really had to be more of a shark. You had to really attack things.
Yeah.
And that really isn't part of my natural personality. It's not that I couldn't do it. I just felt uncomfortable doing it. And I kept thinking there's got to be a better way. But one of the things I recognized is that I was getting a lot of the writers who were actually calling me up and asking me, could I be the development executive on the project?
They wanted Kathie's brain on the
because
project.
They felt that their agent had heard that the notes had come from me and all this. So this is one of those things. And that was a turning point for me. And I realized that sometimes it pays to be a dolphin and not a shark. And so,
and by the way, I'm going to go back and drill down on a lot. I just am not wanting to interrupt you. There's so much I'm going to ask you to flesh out, but let's go into that for a second. I get this. I get the shark thing really clearly. What do you mean by be a dolphin, not a shark? That's pretty. I like that. I think I get it, but I want to hear you. I think I'm going to learn something from this.
Well, for me, I figure if I did have to ask a lot of questions because I had not been an executive.
Right.
And so then I realized that the nicest thing to do was to actually just go up and just say, call somebody on the intercom and just say, is there a chance I can, we can grab lunch or we can grab a drink together? Because I really I need to ask you about being an executive.
Right.
And the way I did it like that, instead of, I knew of other people that I've seen making, going up in the ranks, and they were rather abrasive.
Yeah.
And I knew that wasn't something that I would feel comfortable doing.
Right.
So that's what I did is I would ask questions, and I would actually ask people, what do you think is the best way to handle this or that or whatever? And I was surprised at how some of the higher ups really just said, this is the first time that anyone's ever asked about that.
Like, how did I become me? How do you do this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, that's why I do podcasting and now these shows, is to share information with people like yourself. And of course, for my own, I'll be hopefully learning. I'll be learning till the day they put me in the ground. So,
well, there's always something for us to learn, something new for us to learn, especially because, technology, this stupid COVID thing going on, there's just different ways that things are going to have to be done.
Yeah.
And so what's great is that I found that by actually being nice enough to ask somebody for their advice, it really made a difference in the relationships that I built with agents and writers. I had writers asking for me. I had agents who said, oh, can you make sure that Kathie gets that to develop?
That's unusual. Again, I know enough that I can brag on you a little bit. I think it's clear to people, but just in case it's not, you were in the job, so you would know all the times it happened to you, but I'm sure from all your colleagues and your experience before and after, it's pretty uncommon that they're requesting a specific creative exec, development exec, specifically have this person. That's not as common. It's more common for like a higher executive to go, so-and-so's gonna quarterback this thing. But that's really special that the people saw you and your reputation you'd been in it a long time by then, it sounds like, but that your reputation had preceded you to that degree is pretty special.
Well, it's just, it was one of those things where I recognized that I think I can get more information by being more of a dolphin, by just simply asking a question. Can you give me your opinion on? And what, and learning to use an open-ended question, and not just demanding things or just saying, do this my way. And it worked quite well. And I was I was at Disney in different departments for about 9 years, which is kind of
that's a long time. That's a long time for any studio. It's a long time, especially for Disney, I think, during the day, especially or now. Yeah.
Well, in doing all of this, with learning that it's, at least it worked for me to be a dolphin and not a shark. I realized this is what brought everything to me in focus, is that this is how I can build a community for myself. And it's, building a community of people that you get along with and you can rely on, and that you can have each other's back, and that you guys can share information, and that it doesn't have to be so, everything doesn't have to be so rigid or nasty.
I really appreciate that point of view. The idea of the dolphin, we think of as dolphins as gentle, and also they pop up friendly as opposed to being on the hunt to kill and eat. So I'm assuming that's kind of the surface of the metaphor, but I think it's really appropriate both in terms of process, but it really, of course, talks about the attitude behind it. And this is a thing that I have in common, which is that, I think, and I imagine if I ask you this question, though you're a dolphin, naturally, I bet you have a dorsal fin, a virtual dorsal fin ready to pop up when you need it, right? You probably have, you have your virtual shark hat you could probably put on if you needed it, but imagine you don't. I have my imaginary shark hat as well, but I'm coming from a different place, which is probably explains part of my career, but that's another story. This isn't psychotherapy for me, it's your interview, so please continue.
No, I mean, it's, there are times when, especially, eventually I've actually, I've gone on to, I was a producer on a television show, Beyond the Break.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so, and that's some of the times you're on the set and you really do have to, you can't just say things really nicely, but you can say things in a different way.
Yes. You can always be kind unless something's on fire or somebody's about to get hit by a moving car or something. Unless you're avoiding a crisis in the moment, there's rarely an excuse to not try to be kind. Which I'm saying that so that I've said it, and because I need to remember this myself. I have my moments. That's to be candid.
Well, I think what's great about you though is you've got this amazing sense of humor.
Well, I appreciate it. I try. I appreciate that you and I have a good vibe. Yeah, if somebody gets me, I try to keep it light. But please, let me not interrupt you. I appreciate that. But actually, talk about that a little more. You don't have to butter my biscuit, although you're welcome to. But generically, why is that important? Because I agree. That's how I am anyway. Honestly, that's been, skill and time and training and all these things that I put into my own career are what they are, and that's why the rest of it matters. But that is a key thing. I generally am able to at least make new friends, even if, they don't buy my thing. The process, you meet people, and hopefully, I don't know what they're saying behind me behind closed doors, but hopefully it's not bad,
Even if somebody didn't buy your script, if it was professionally done, right, and if you handled the meetings in a way that where you understood where that executive or that agent was coming from, right, it makes all the difference in the world. It means that you're somebody that they could eventually work with should something else, come up. And I think that's what has helped a lot for me. It also got to the point where I finally decided, enough of this. Actually, after I started producing, I realized, no, I think that this is something I don't want to do, continue to do.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, and you can't control everything. You can try, but it does, there's just too many things going on. And so I realized I had to sort of cut bait there. I thought, okay, this is something where you have to, Kathie, you got to think of what else is it that really means a lot to you. And I have had for years people asking me, can you do this? Can you do that? And I back in 2002 or whenever it was, I had written the first draft of the script selling game. This is the second.
I know. I'm just so people can. If you're on video, I'm holding up Kathie's book and making her laugh. Yes, published by our friends at Michael Weesey Productions. Link in the show notes for the new version. But please continue. The first version of this, you said, was I picked it up to actually look at the date, and then you saw me pick up the book. So so we got a copyright 2011 on this edition, and a copyright. Oh, it doesn't have the first edition in here, so that makes sense. But yeah, 2011 on the second, but it was early 2000s when you did the first version?
Yeah, 2002. And it was because no one had done a book about what's expected.
Yeah.
And I actually got criticism from a couple of executives who just said, well, why are you writing a book about that? And I said, well, aren't you tired of reading crappy scripts? Aren't you tired of dealing with people that aren't sure what to do or what the right path is to take? Right. And they finally, that was back in the days where there were more sharks than dolphins. But one of the things that I when I learned that, okay, you know what, production is not for you, and I realized, what am I going to do with all of this knowledge? And I have to say that, several people just said, why aren't you doing more workshops? Why aren't you getting out there and talking to people? And so I started expanding it instead of doing just little one hour things
Like
at
one-offs.
conferences or something like that. I started booking workshops, and I have, and actually in there with a dolphin and not a shark, I developed a good relationship with people like Linda Sager, Pamela Smith, several other authors. And we used to keep each other in tune about, I did a workshop here. You might want to call them.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this went well, great audience, and they'll love this. And yeah.
And we started trading information, and actually it worked out quite well. I have now, to this date, let's see, I've done workshops in 21 countries around the world.
Yeah. I'll include the link to your online presence, of course, as well. And frankly, it was when I first read all of your information. I mean, I was aware of who you were by reputation to a degree, but when I read that part of your information, because I'm, you know me well enough to know I'm a traveler and I do a lot of that stuff. More unrelated to entertainment, more like international business kind of stuff on my alternate reality that I also live in. But what you've done with your seminars and teaching and training and the things you do, we could do 2 hours just on that. And so tell me what you want to, but I was really blown away by how, I was aware that you did this and had done it. I had no concept of how much you've done it because, I know, besides there's the Michael Weesey folks, and I've known Doug Simmons for 20 years. I know people who do this thing or have done that kind of a thing. I took Doug Simmons to China, back like 5-6 years ago, and whatever. So I'm aware of what goes into that. I'm aware of what can be. It's pretty great. What are some of the, I'll say some of my questions. I don't want to interrupt you too much. Please continue, because I'm going to go back and ping a few of these things if you're listening at home and ask her this. I will. Be patient. Be patient, dear listeners. Be patient. Please continue, Kat. So you started doing these seminars, and now you've cut to 21 countries and hundreds of billions served, satisfied customers, and you're not McDonald's. Sorry,
sort of
looking
brings
for a
us
joke.
all up present here, and I'm always getting, especially so much going on with this pandemic, and people are asking me, well, are you going to continue to do any of these things, or what's going on?
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the future. And, I have to say I am pretty busy because a lot of people, because they are either out of jobs or they have limited work where it has to be done at home. So they have a little bit of extra time. I have been getting calls and, emails from writers saying, you know what, can you take a look at here's 5 ideas that I have, to start a script. Tell me which one you like the best, or which one you think, might be more productive to do.
Right.
I've been getting people who are with writers groups who have said, any chance that you can do a little Skype, 1 hour session with our group?
People pitch you, hey, are you available? You could do this for us.
So I'm actually pretty busy, and I've really been enjoying it. But it also, one of the things is that it really has made me think long and hard about, because like everybody else,
where is this going? What's going to happen?
And how long is it going to last, and how is this going to affect not just our present, but our future? And one thing I remembered, and this is from high school of all things, and I was never very good in European history or anything like that. I remember one of my history teachers said, hey, there's a thing here. Every 100 years, there seems to be some kind of a pandemic. Thing that, whether it's, what we're going through, or other people having, these awful, terrible, illnesses and everything, and plague and stuff like that. And so, what has happened though is that if you go back, and he went and did this whole thing. He had a chart there. He had people's names up here, half of whom I didn't know. Started talking about people that actually, because they were secluded and were forced to stay at home.
Right.
If you went outside, you got ill and
Sure.
probably died.
Sure.
So he started talking about all these wonderful things that happened, though,
Right.
and most in the arts.
Yeah, people have time to write that symphony or book
And
or
sometimes
play,
with
and
inventions, things like that. But
if they don't
the thing
get
is
sick
that-
and die.
Yeah, so I mean, it was like he said, Dashiell Hammett wrote all those wonderful detective novels during that time,
Okay.
and
During the 1918,
I guess,
was it that
and
far back?
yeah,
I'm
and he
embarrassing myself
said,
with my. I think Dashiell Hammett came along later, but it was one of those crisis situations.
yeah, somewhere
Not
around.
quite that far back for Dashiell Hammett, but yes, one of those world changing
Shakespeare.
events.
Shakespeare did, and there's an Italian writer, Boccaccio. He did one. Gosh, it was called Decameron.
Yeah, of course.
That's
like the one thing that those of us who are not students of that are vaguely familiar with.
Oh well, but it's really about you guys. Is it because it's about a group of people who were friends and they were stuck together in this faraway place during a pandemic, and they entertained themselves by telling stories. Yeah. And so that's what he wrote about. Boccaccio wrote about that. It's one of those things where I always remembered that was just something in the back of my mind when this plague thing came over, when everybody started talking about, well, we're going to have to, shelter in place and all this. And what am I going to do? And all of these writers, about after the first month of being, sheltering in place, I started getting emails and calls from writers saying, okay, I've got these ideas, but I don't know what to do. And so I would tell them, okay, well, give me 5 log lines and I'll tell you which one sounds most promising. But, I've actually kept busy.
Sure. That's fantastic. Yeah. I was telling, I mean, it sounds like you're between friends and probably some professional consultation or appearance type engagements. I mean, I've likewise been, I'm pretty much a home office, work from home introvert type. Anyway, I play an extrovert in the entertainment business. I'm not shy anymore, but I mostly am a head down, lock myself in the lab and just work. And so whether it's a paid engagement or it's development on something that I just need to put in the time. One of my friends, Carl Bressler, has this concept of paying time to something, like I'm paying time to myself or to this project or that. So whether I'm being paid for my time or whether I'm paying time, I mean, this isn't a, pat me on the back heroic statement, but I'm always working 80 to 90 hours a week. My girlfriend's halfway around the world. There's no kids. I don't have anybody. I've got a cool roommate, but he, takes care of himself. I'm in my sublet during quarantine here in LA, and so I'm always working and always developing. And I was on a 2-hour consultation, paid consultation, immediately before this call. The audience didn't know this, but we were taking a few minutes to get ourselves set up because we were both busy right before this. So it's been a real opportunity, and that's, I mean, I've taken it. I use this not to be trite. I mean, I know tons of people affected. I know many people with like a dead immediate family member. So I do not say this as a flippant thing, to be clear. But there's been this magic trick that I'm fortunate to see a lot of people to have pulled this off. And I think we're fortunate to be in this category where we took the COVID lemons and made some nice lemonade out of it. I mean, we took this opportunity of, okay, what are we going to do? Oh, we can't do these things we normally do. All right. Well, what can I do sitting alone? What can I do sitting on my couch or at my desk or as I'm walking the dog? Or, I can think, I can develop, I can give feedback, I can engage. And so I've been overloaded with that. And so I decided to start a new web TV show in the middle of it too.
Oh.
So that's what we're doing. Yes. That's
great. Well, I've actually heard from people in Asia and Europe and Canada and all over the place saying that they wanted to start new projects and everything. And what's even better is that I already, if things go okay, there's a vaccine and all that stuff, I've already gotten things lined up for next year. Yeah. So a lot of people internationally have contacted me and said, "Hey, could you do this or that?" I mean, one of the things I'm a mentor with the Rocaberti retreat, and I don't know if you've heard of that.
You familiarized me with that in one of our other calls. Will you briefly tell the folks at home what that is? And again, I'll link to your central location where hopefully all these things are, and if not, we'll put it together. But this is really extraordinary. I knew such things existed, but when Kathie laid this out for me, if you're listening, when Kathie explained this to me and showed me the link, I'm like, oh, I want to do that. I will do this before they plant me one day. This sounds pretty amazing. Sooner than later would be good, so I could use the information and sell something. But I definitely want this experience. Please tell us what this is.
Okay, well, the retreat, I started doing it back in 2007. They asked if I would come and be one of the 4 mentors. And each mentor has 4 mentees, 4 writers.
Okay.
They could be screenwriters or novelists. So anyway, it's and it takes place, best of all, most of them are in a castle in France.
Yeah, this is the part that got my attention.
Well, it also means that because it is a 14th century castle, it may not have all of the nice amenities of air conditioning.
I imagine it's rather depending on the time of year, it's either really hot or really cold and drafty, and yeah.
But
not
it's
the most pleasant place to spend a fortnight. But
you know what? It's great because you can feel the creative energy just walking in to a castle because you're imagining what happened in this castle. So I think it's something that's why it seems to work. But each mentor has 4 mentees. And we go over their work. We get their work in advance of meeting them, and then we sit down with them for like 5 days, and try to get the best out of it. Help them to move up the ladder to get their work in a professional form. So that's something that I've been doing since 2007. So it's one of those things. In fact, what happened since the COVID thing took place. Rocaberti now has Rocaberti Virtual.
Okay.
And in fact, this Saturday, be doing the virtual one. And again, there are 4 of us mentors, and the writers in advance pay a certain amount of money, and they send in their synopses. Or some of them do it where they just pay for a certain amount of money and they just watch everything. They just,
so you can kind of either audit or participate.
5 hours. It's 5 hours, and they can just listen to different lessons being taught.
Sure.
And listen. And we also will we do on certain levels. That I think the next level up is one where we get a chance to look at people's 2-page synopses and give some advice about it.
Right.
And the top level is some of these writers will actually pitch their project and get advice from all 4 of us to let them know exactly where they need to be going and doing. So it's something that's worked out quite well. There are also other retreats and things. I think there's one in Cape Cod, and there's some others, and I think it's one of those things where it's also opening the doors internationally, and I do think that's in our future. I have heard from more writers overseas lately, a lot of them, and they're interested because the United States is known for sort of being the heartbeat of entertainment world, and so they want to know more about. Well, American movies always do so much better than most of the foreign movies. So why is that? So, sometimes it's just a matter of different kinds of storytelling methods.
Send me your address and I'll message you a copy of Save the Cat. Typically, at least in my experience in certain places, I will not specify by country so as not to irritate my friends there. Typically, there's some sort of a lack of either what is a good concept, either is a conceptual problem in the beginning, it's usually the issue, or just an absolute lack of understanding of structure, character development, or plot, subplot, theme. How do you develop that? And that's getting a little more, that's in the direction of an MFA course, but it's you in my experience, and I'm going to ask you a bunch of craft questions before we get to our wrap up future points. By the way, so give me a moment to jump in here and ask you a bunch of questions. But go ahead.
But anyway, I mean, that's one of the things is that I'm finding that I think for the future, you are going to see a lot more joint, probably joint projects being done with different countries. I think we'll be able to have because this pandemic is happening to all of us in the world. It's not just happening here.
It's happening. Yeah, the results of it are everywhere. It's different stories, but my friends in Taiwan are having a very different experience than I am in LA. Besides the awesome jiaozi down the street. Dumplings for you, Lao Wai. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and then I think even further out, into the future. I mean, I just think there are other worlds and there's other beings. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
tell me more, Kathie. You can't talk about aliens and not tell me more. Because
I don't know. There's just something that some people ask, well, what do you see in the future? And I do think, sure, there's going to probably be movies, or there's going to be some way of storytelling. I mean, it all started with the drawing things on the cave walls. So, but storytelling is something that every country, every nationality, whatever, we all have done it at some point. We sometimes use stories to get a point across. I mean, storytelling is something that all cultures have.
Right.
There's not one culture that doesn't have it. And there could be, because we certainly are starting to talk a lot about it, it could be that on other planets or other people coming, or other figures or whatever, beings coming down to Earth. I don't know. But, for whatever's in the future, stories, I think, are always going to be a part of our landscape. And, and discovering those and helping people with their creations and, not just to keep us entertained, but so that we can learn from things too. Right. I think that's important. So, I mean, to me, that's what I kind of see in the future.
We'll have to talk more offline about some of this as well, actually, as I see, and we'll have you back.
When COVID's done, I promise I'll come down.
Nice, please. Yeah, no, I look forward to. I definitely, I definitely will owe you more than one coffee by the time you get. They were sprung from the zombie apocalypse. Let me ask you, let's do this and then we'll circle back and kind of wrap it up. But let's maybe take, this is a suggestion. Let's take 5 to 15, probably 10 minutes. If I could ask you, let me ask you a few sort of lightning round type questions. You could take 10 minutes and answer one, or we could do 10 but let me ask you a few sort of questions. Let's pretend that I met you at an event where, I'm credible enough that you're going to give me some time and we're enjoying each other's chat. So you're going to give me some time. But let's say that I'm kind of picking your brain and you're wanting to share this information, right? Pretend that's their context. But I'm aware I got 5, maybe 10 minutes to ask this lady some questions. So let's take that approach. From all your experience in story, and you've got, again, studio, network, executive, producing experience, educating experience, by the way, because I taught you, it's where you learn what you know and actually do and don't know, and you get better at understanding the things you understand a little, and you get better at explaining it, and you're fantastic at it, honestly, in my experience, between just knowing you a bit and then your book and our conversations. So, lightning round. What are the most common mistakes assume we're talking about scripts and stories. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see that are not the mundane misspellings, wrong format? I mean, assume that it's fully competent, professional the way it's delivered. Like if you wear reading glasses and you took your glasses off and squinted, it looks and feels like a real thing, and it's by somebody who's not a dummy, but it doesn't work. What are the most common mistakes you see in story crafting, things like that?
Development of characters
Okay.
is probably one, um, and in a script, dialogue is probably the second thing.
Okay.
In a book, there you'll probably notice more books nowadays have a lot more dialogue in it than they used to
Yeah,
when
they've taken almost like the scriptment form, which is what we
Mhm.
in this industry call a thing that's more than treatment, but it's not the script, but it's like a treatment that's kind of got some dialogue, a lot of dialogue, and it's got some scenes in it, but it's written in a narrative form, kind of called a scriptment a lot of times. But yeah, totally. Oh, you see people trying to borrow that vernacular visual language.
Mhm. And I think that, there are a lot of wonderful books out there. I think people
Mm-hmm.
should take advantage of going through and looking at it. Also, reading a script. People, I don't know how many times that I've had clients, and they'll send a script to me, and I can tell pretty much they either haven't read a script, or they are or they just basing things on something that happened to them, and they just want it to be put down on paper.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
Right.
so I think that's what's one of the things is that
Okay.
do need a certain amount of education
Sure.
about it. You need to be able to look at scripts, and you can order scripts now. They're usually only about $10 each or something like that.
Sure.
And, it's if you can order scripts so you can see what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. I think the hardest thing for a lot of writers, especially some of them that I meet that that really don't seem to know the process of things, it's because you haven't read enough books about the whole thing,
craft, about the industry.
about how things work, about how do you, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, is that I was tired of having people not knowing how to pitch, not knowing, what are the things that we look for.
Right. Well, that's
And
my
not
next question.
much about the business,
That's my next question. Okay, so this is something that most people never get to ask until they get in the ministry, until they get that first yes, and then you're gonna option or buy my thing, and then I get to meet your boss. Oh, okay. Until somebody has that moment. But what you don't often get to ask someone with your experience is, and we're gonna make some assumptions. Assume the IP's really fresh, original, professionally done top to bottom. Actors will want to play the parts. Assume that it's got a identifiable market niche. Assume it's not completely copying something else that's out there. Assume it's got kind of everything going for it. But what is the internal conversation that is had in the studio network, high-end big production company offices? Like, what are the things? Again, you're going to verify. The reason I threw out those caveats is assume, because those are the initial things. First, is it good? First, is it really good, and does it fit the market? And then, are people going to want to play it? Can we produce it? Is it going to make sense? Is it going to be too expensive? Is it set on Mars? They're all those things. Is it producible? Is it good? Do we want to do it? But how do you determine the things that are the shades of gray or that aren't so black and white? What's that process like? How do you kind of, I know there's never one answer. I'm just, if you can kind of roll with that, what are some of the things you sort of look at beyond the mundane? Assume the mundane stuff is all good.
Well, what is it going to be like a year or a year and a half from now when it comes out?
Right. Okay.
Because whoever's at the other studios or the other production companies, other television stations, they're all
making stuff, developing stuff. Yeah.
Thing.
The competitive landscape that you're not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one thing to know what's going to be released that Sony's announced, but you don't know what Sony Television's. You don't know what's in their lab, other than maybe they announced it when they made the deal for the pilot or something. Yeah, you don't know what. Sometimes you hear about a thing after it's completed. Some people don't want to do press. Like, we're not doing press on my current movie. We may do press when we cast like the big actor, but we're not going to put anything out otherwise. It's because why? But please continue.
Well, and also too, I mean, it depends. A lot of things depend on people's relationships, people within the studio or the television remember the relationships they have with actors or producers or directors. It's really important to know who's friends with who. That is very helpful, which is why I always tell people, if you can, you need to try and get somebody who's a good agent who sort of is up on all of that. And that's one thing that I think it's hard for somebody who is in Iowa or somewhere and they aren't, they aren't in New York or Chicago or someplace where it's more metropolitan, and you get a better chance to get to know people who might know someone.
Yeah, because they're around and they live there, they go to that restaurant or that gym, and
so it's and it's funny. Seldom, it doesn't happen very often that somebody from that doesn't know anybody gets something done.
Sure.
Usually, if it is, it's somebody who's won a competition.
Right. That's why those things are important. If you win, and a little note to my, let me please take this moment for a public service announcement to all my former students or up-and-coming filmmaker friends. Congratulations on completing whatever you completed, first of all. Bigger congratulations on getting accepted into the Podunk, Oklahoma, third annual, film festival. If you win Best Picture, cool. But let's not have that be the top line on your resume if it doesn't say like Nickel Fellowship, or that you went through the Sundance Lab, or that if it's not a major top tier festival or event, it's still good on you. It's still worthy. It's still worthy. It's an encouragement in the right direction. It means somebody liked it and recognized it as being better than all the other stuff. But you can't dine out on that. That's not going to open the keys to the kingdom. You have to win a major industry recognized recognition of some kind, event, festival, award. You have to win some kind of a major kudo that's going to travel internationally.
And if people want to know which ones, all you have to do is Google top screenwriting company.
Exactly. It's all right there. It's all right there. Yep. Yeah. So let me ask you this. And again, I know some of this is perhaps it's not directly in your job, but you just mentioned when an agent or manager, in your experience, when an agent or manager, again, you mentioned earlier that back in the day, it got to where your reputation as a development exec and creative exec was such that they would ask for you to do that job on their project, which is not the typical path. Typically, that person, they're known and respected to like Wayne Hollywood respects people. Other people respect you. But the point is that, they would probably try to go, if they're going to try to call in a favor, they might try to go higher. But the fact is, they went for you when you were not at the position to greenlight a thing, but you were in the position to tell the greenlight person, this is really good. I recommend you really give this a good look, boss. But in your experience, what are the things agents and managers are looking for when considering a potential client signing specifically to writing?
Well, I once, asked an agent about that, and they said one of the things they look for is, what else have they written? Right. Is it just one script?
Okay.
It used to work, for one script wonders, but not very often does that happen. I actually, when I was an executive at Disney, just out of curiosity, what I did was because I met so many writers, I would ask them, how many scripts did you have to write before you got recognized that you were a really good writer? Where you either won a competition or you got an agent, or somebody actually said, hey, I want you to I want to take a look at your project. How many scripts did you have to write?
Right.
I think I must have talked to about 90 something, almost 100 people.
Okay.
Only one of them had written one script. And that woman had...
One of them won the lottery, but everybody else just worked in the coal mine every day.
She wrote a script, and it, for some reason,
right thing, right place, right time. It was the thing that that it was the thing to be
And that
done at
was
the
all
moment, and
theater,
people saw
and
that
she-
and grabbed it. Yeah, that's good
she
for her.
actually-
Good for her.
Yeah,
She had her
actually
finger on the pulse. She
got it.
clearly had her finger on the pulse, so she did that. That's awesome. But you can't repeat that. That's like asking for lightning to strike again and charge the power station for me. It's like, you can't plan that.
somebody bought it, but then things changed, of course. You know how personnel changes.
Oh, yeah. I see where this is going, but I'll shut up.
Okay. And it was 5 more years before she made another sale.
Yikes.
So that's
Yeah.
now. On the other hand, there is a writer that I really enjoyed his work a lot. You know, and I read some of his stuff, and I asked him about it, and he wrote 15 scripts before he got an option.
Wow.
And he was able to get an agent off of that option. But he also has now, it took 15 scripts.
Yeah, so that agent was able to go, oh, this is good. What else have you done? Let me call my delivery guy. Wham! And there's the stack of paper this high. Well, 15 scripts about that high. But yeah. So they're able to go. Have you written anything else? Yes. Yes, I have.
That's the question. Usually the second question.
What else have you written? You got a minute?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then when they ask you that, by the way, what's the generic version of what's the outline of what they should say? Absolutely. Here's my best 1 or 2 or 3. Like, you should probably then tick off ding ding ding. Oh yeah, I've got this romantic comedy that's that like your best little casual. It sounds like conversation, but it's actually your log line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is that what you would suggest? It's like, absolutely. You know, I've got a rom-com that's this, I got an action that's that, and I've got another drama like the one you read, only it's set in space. Oh, cool. I mean, kind of a version like that. Would you suggest something like that, or is this why I don't have a manager and an agent?
No, but you need to make sure that you actually do have some projects.
Of course. Well,
a lot of people.
We're assuming that that's not BS. Yeah. No. I assume that this is somebody's not talking smack here. Assume it's real. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that kind of thing would make them. Are there any? Are there any universal deal breakers? Assuming the work is great. I mean, again, you have to assume that like the work is absolutely qualifies them to be at that level. Are there some real deal breakers? Again, besides just a horribly noxious personality, are there any other things that are more that you see repeated, or is it kind of hard to genericize that? You know, are there things that would keep somebody who could do the work? And I'm not trying to lead you to say there are. I mean, actually, in my head, I'm thinking, well, no, if your work is great and you're not a jerk, then, I mean, you can't plan luck, but you can do all the work to set yourself up in a fortunate, lucky position. Are there any things that are like just total red flags that you see pop up, or is it case by case?
I think it's case by case.
Okay.
I also think that it's important that people do their due diligence in talking about, finding out what a studio wants or what a certain production company, what kind of projects do they want or have.
Oh yeah.
And it's not to duplicate it. It's to be able to know that those are the kinds of things, kind of genres that they seem to respond to.
Yeah, that's one tip I can
Read
share.
Is too important.
Absolutely. My advice to the people who would ask for that advice is for up and comers, especially up and coming producers, but it certainly applies to writers and directors, and frankly even actors. Any actors who ask advice, I said learn how to think like a producer, and your career will be much smoother because you'll figure out.
Notice there's a lot more actors having their own production company.
As soon as they get established, as soon as anybody's been in the business long enough to know how it works, and then they have the clout, because typically, Star will get their deals set up at a network or studio, TV or feature film studio, and usually funding either on or off the lot, whatever. But they typically form their production companies when they're so established. But yeah, it's you notice that the smart ones do that. And then I always tell people, it's like when people talk about, say, just pick Mr. Spielberg, who's someone everyone is aware of, it's like you realize that he's way busier as a producer than he is as a director, because he's directed 2 movies at once, where he's got one remotely set up on the set where he's done that. He did that when they made the Tom Hanks stuck in an airport movie, and the other one they overlapped production just because of how it all works and things shifted. But so he has directed 2 movies at once, but not in the same exact breath, right? He's like, do this, okay, lighting setup, great, I'll direct this movie on the video link. But the point is, he's always his company, and yeah, he has a staff. He's not out there trying to like tell them where to park the grip truck on the set. But nonetheless, as a producer, Steven Spielberg, as a producer EP, he and his company have got a bazillion projects at any given time. He's always super busy as a producer. And so whether it's a director or a star or a writer, so always learn how to think like a producer, especially for actors or writers, anyone who is basically waiting on someone else to hire them. Directors can take a bit more initiative, and directors often, as you know, of course, directors often also are producers. When Steven Spielberg wants to, if he has an idea to develop a thing and says, I got this great idea, let's hire that writer there and let's develop it. Well, he as a director wants to make it, but I always would tell students, I give them a little pop quiz. It's like, in that decision, was that a directorial decision of, hey, gee, let's develop this into a movie? It's probably, that's more producer hat. I mean, it's related because it's him, but it's really, that's a producer hat kind of a decision. And I always would tell, again, it's like, even if you never have a credit on anything as a producer, you're always the producer and exec producer of your most important project, which is your career, right? And your life. So you have to be proactive about how you build it. I'll ask you one last question, and then I'll thank you for your time, because we'll have to do round 2. I thank you for all your time today, Kathie. You've been awesome. Where would you like people to go and learn all about you? And again, I'll put the links in the show notes. So if you're driving or jogging, you don't have to stop and get a pen or text this, but it'll be a link right here when you're listening to this. But where could people find out more about you and some of these cool things we're talking about?
Well, my website is Kathie, Kathie, at Kathie Fong Yoneda, KathieFongYoneda.com. Very simple.
Oh, fantastic. So your email is your name, and your URL is your full name, Kathie Fong Yoneda. KathieFongYoneda.com is your full URL. Fantastic. Kathie, my last question, besides that was the gimme. I want to make sure we get that in. What is next? Assuming that the alien space brothers are not going to come save us in time, and assuming that there is an end in sight to the zombie apocalypse at some point, we're all released into the wild universally. We can live, travel, work, do our thing. People's tastes are going to shift, right? We're not all, like the locked in at home drama, like all this. Kudos to people who are trying to, again, make their own lemonade out of the lemons. But all these little trapped at home COVID self-shot on your iPhone things, no one's going to ever want to see that, because we're going to be so sick of this. That stuff is definitely like a candy bar. You eat it for now, but you never want to think about that candy bar again. What do you think content's going to look like? What do you think the industry is going to look like? And I want to ask you to kind of go through corporate consolidation and all that, because I think that's coming too. But in terms of just storytelling, human taste, this is a human question. Your professional experience is you're going to bring that to bear, because we always do. But I'm really asking Kathie, as Kathie the person, what do you think we're going to respond to? What do you think we're going to be hungry for? What stories are going to matter in the new normal-ish future?
Well, I think it'll probably be stories that are more positive, of triumphing over things that seem monstrous or insurmountable. I think that because that is something people will understand, because they will have gone through this pandemic. People always want to look for hope and look for something, a reason to be able to smile or to move ahead. And so I think that those are probably the kinds of things that people are going to be looking for. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to have other stories, but I just think in general, those are probably the ones that are going to pique everybody's interest, the studio's interest or the big star's interest. They're going to probably want to do something more along that line first.
Yeah. And I'll throw in one last one, which is just you personally. What are you most looking forward to? It could literally be going to Buffalo Wild Wings or something. I mean, whatever it is. What are you most looking forward to that you can go do with no qualifications or considerations of, masking and social distancing? What's something you're most looking forward? Maybe it's a you and the hubby thing or just a Kathie solo adventure. But what are you most looking forward to once you can just do and go anywhere without a second thought?
I actually am looking. I am looking forward because I've done it every year for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of my writers who are. I've taught in, like I said, in 21 different countries, but I love being in the company of the writers that I teach because I love their energy. Mm-hmm. It makes me want to be as helpful as I can, especially if they're, when they're in a different country, they really are eager to want to know more. And sometimes the way that they look at things, it's the way that I sometimes wish people in the United States would look at things. And that is to sort of look at things in a more positive way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I get a great deal out of that. I learn more when I travel.
Right.
And it really is something, I mean, you and I have sort of touched a little bit on that because, you spend half your life.
We have the stamps in our passport club, pinky swear. We have the secret pinky password of how many extra pages have you added to how many passports? Yeah. Not to, I'm just saying it's an occupational hazard, but it's a real gift to be able to travel.
About a year and a half ago, 1 page left.
Oh yeah. Wow. Well, yeah. I've got in my current one. I think I have 13 pages full of just China ins and outs.
Wow.
Yeah. I got the one this time that comes with like 56, whatever order the big one because you can't do the extender pages now. But so you're looking forward to seeing your writers.
Yeah, I enjoy going overseas and working with writers from a different culture, to know a little bit more about their country, about them, about what they find entertaining.
Right.
I think it gives me a better perspective of things when we have all these global problems. Interestingly enough, I've been hearing just as much, if not more, from students and writers that I've met abroad during this pandemic.
Yeah.
They're all, in fact, some of them wrote and they said, "We heard there was a big forest fire."
Oh, they're checking in on you to make sure that you're doing all right. Yeah, I keep my mom posted. My mom is in Birmingham, Alabama, so about the last few months, about every week has been me asking her if they're about to get flooded or blown off the map by a hurricane or a tornado. And then her asking me if my house is on fire, and so that's kind of our weekly check-in
about those things because, I mean, naturally, the pandemic is something that's affected them.
Sure.
Although a lot of the other countries, though, they've gone through pretty much the worst of it already.
Oh yeah.
So
I was on the phone with people in 3 of them over the last 2 days, or phone call, whatever, but. Yeah, it's very different. I mean, I'm dealing with some, I've got one partner down in Taipei on a project, and I've got 2 guys in New Zealand on another thing, and I mean, they're being careful, but anybody who knows the news and this date in history can understand the situation's a tad different than we're dealing with here in the States. So I'm happy for them, and I'm happy for the fact that it gives us some hope that it can be dealt with, But Kathie, I want to end on a positive note. I want to say thank you so much. You've been really generous with both your time and your advice, and your story is, honestly, it's just really so inspiring for me to hear this. I mean, you have that real, you have the hero's journey where you're the hero of your own story, and I think that you're a really great example You also, like I know, Chris Vogler, who wrote that book, the great book, The Writer's Journey. We know his story of and I've done multiple interviews with Chris on other shows, but very specifically, you know, being the hero of your own story is a theme that I've talked about both on and offline with him in our interviews. And so you really exemplify being the hero of your own hero's journey. So
Actually, Chris and I worked together.
right. I thought you did some seminars perhaps, or perhaps you worked at Disney. Did you work at Disney together?
Together.
So you were there when he wrote his famous memo.
I used to have a copy of that famous memo.
Okay, so we'll have to say, can you tell the quick story from your perspective? Just as this is a bonus round. We did a nice job of landing the plane for a normal show, but welcome to the new show with Brendan Davis, because this is how we do it. Something good comes up, I'm going to chase it like a dog on a bone. And let me say this much context. Chris Vogler, got established, famous in the industry. He's had a lot of interesting things that are kudos to him, to say the least. But what really launched him was that he wrote after Star Wars, but he was reading Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey and figured out, oh, that's what Lucas was reading before they were talking about it. And he was the one who wrote up the famous, I think it was a 7-page memo that he accidentally left on the copier in the executive office. I'm doing air quotes if you're on audio only. Accidentally left it on the copier in the executive office suite, where I think it was Katzenberg. Somebody saw it and basically landed on Katzenberg's desk, as I understand it. And then he went, who the hell wrote this? Oh, that kid Vogler, get him in here. And it was some version of that. And then he got assigned to go work on story. And Lion King was full of steam, but they were having a few issues and they threw him in.
Chris Vogler and I worked together at Disney. I think it was around 1984. And part of one of our assignments was from Jeffrey Katzenberg, who really wanted to do something different. He didn't want to just rely on doing things like the Cinderella and that kind of thing. He wanted to do a little bit more worldly. Mm-hmm. And so he had us going through all of these different books that had folk tales from different countries, and it was just it was not something that all the readers wanted to do, but Chris and I did the majority of them because he really knew that we actually didn't mind reading books. We actually had people at the story department who would not read books; they wanted to only read scripts. Right. Because they're shorter. Sure. And there's something to be said. That's what you want to do, then just do that. But your approach is the smarter approach. Okay, we did it. I mean, we went through, I don't know how many, I would say dozens and dozens. I think, but a lot of books from different countries that sort of were their folk tales. Okay. And, we gave it all to Jeffrey, and we had different, I didn't read all his stuff and he didn't read all of mine, but it seemed, according to Jeffrey, that we both were Chris and I sort of thought the same, that, there's a lot of these similarities. There are certain ones that were sort of similar that seemed to work, and some of them that we felt, well, maybe those aren't going to quite cut it for the Disney. And, we made our comments and everything. And shortly after that, I became a creative exec. But I oftentimes, what I would do is if there was something that came into me that was submitted to me, and I thought it was something Chris would really respond to and could really do something, give a really good coverage on it, I would ask him, can you do that? So we stayed in touch that way. And one day, we were talking and everything, and he says, oh, well, because I knew he was doing a lot of stuff that had to do with Joseph Campbell. He would talk about that and all that. And in fact, he mentioned it to me when I went to visit him when he used to live in Glendale. And Chris is he's just such an amazing individual. I just love him. And I can't wait. Walking into his house, and there's his dog, and his dog is barking at me, and then he said, okay, I'm going to hold on to the dog until you sit down, and then and then the dog was walking very carefully because Chris had a model castle set up in his living room.
Wow.
A
model castle. Sort of like people
Yes.
build like a train set, but he had a castle that he
A
built.
castle with knights and horses and the whole thing. And the
That's
dog
awesome.
was walking carefully.
The dog
through
knew
all-
enough to walk around the.
Yeah, and came over
I
and
learned that the hard way.
wanted to sniff and lick
Sure,
me and
sure,
stuff
sure.
like that, you know, to make sure that I was okay.
Yeah.
And we sat there and talked. I was on one side,
Gotta
and
guard
he
the
was on the
keep.
other side of the castle. The dog was sitting in the
The
middle,
guard is he's guarding the castle keep.
guarding the castle. I mean, it just
That's great.
Chris is just such a terrific
Well,
person.
we got into a conversation on that last one, the last podcast we did, because he did an addendum to his, he's done the editions of his book, and on the new Writer's Journey Continues, but I think it's called, he's got all these chapters on more esoteric modalities or offbeat ways of thinking about story and character, and it's pretty great, and it's right up my weird California long-haired hippie wheelhouse. It's like chakras and using the tarot to help with character relationships, and you know what? Again, what's genius is you would have to learn enough to understand how those things are, or astrology. Even you don't have to believe anything to use it. If it's a model, something like seriously a tarot deck, if you learn each of these characters is like a character in a giant weird story that you write when you throw them on the table, you can decide what this character represents, and then if you're stuck, you can go, I need my character to have certain traits. This character is interesting, but right now he's exposition man. He doesn't have a greater purpose. And of course, there's other ways to tackle that, like put that in the mouth of somebody who matters and cut him out. But maybe you need to develop him. It's like, maybe I pull out the magician card. What's that guy like? Oh, that's the guy that changes things this way. And then you're like, oh, I can have this character do this that leads us into the second act. And then, so Vogler's thing was like, use what works. And I've had other people, of course, that's a mantra that people hammer in different ways who know what they're talking about through history. So I'm so tickled that you, I know you knew each other and worked together. I did not know Disney. I assumed you overlapped through the small world of writing in Hollywood and teaching seminars and being celebrated story people and authors. But I didn't know you actually started at the mothership back in the day.
No, I actually got a shorter version of that 7-page. I got a 5-page version of it. And it was just, I guess we'd been at Disney about 2 years.
Okay.
86 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's around there.
He says something like that in the chat. Well, Kathie, I kept you more than my allowance. Please give my best to your husband. Thank you for your extra time. And I will put your links in the show notes. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with you again and seeing you in the French countryside one day, possibly at that nice seminar. So,
And if not that, Los Angeles somewhere.
I'll meet you at the Coffee Bean down on Sunset. Thanks a lot, Kathie.
Take care.